What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Modern Man. It's where we have discussions on ways we can be better as men, boys becoming men in the modern society. And today we're going to talk about creating versus consuming. Joining us today, joining the panel, Ryan Alford. What's going on, man?
Thanks for having me.
Of course, usual suspects, Tyler Harris. Charles Russ in the building, as always. And the first thing to get it started.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's about you.
We check the
Let them
footwork out.
shine. Let them shine. Let them shine.
They want to see them right there. That's that new.
Go ahead.
Charles just got off the moon.
Hey, that's it, baby.
Let us see what you're working
Hey,
with.
let them shine. Let it shine, baby. Let it shine.
Real man can moonwalk.
Now hold on, but you got Tyler's got nice little.
Yeah.
He's got the off-white. It's on the shoe. It's written
It
on
says
the
it.
shoe.
Yeah.
I
So you
almost
know
wore
it's- so you
the
know it's
retro
good.
Air Jordans, but I thought this guy might.
Yeah, you know, you got to watch him on the fashion
know.
thing. He's gonna show up with the new stuff.
I know.
See, that's perfect because you're all stylish, and part of what you create is your style. We're talking about creating versus consuming. What does that mean to you guys?
I think it's just not looking like everybody else.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people like to do, just blend in. I think it's just standing out. Whether it's, with your clothes or some people use personality. I think it's just having people look at you and think something maybe is different. That's nice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to differentiate yourself from all the noise.
I've gotten to where, I'm so busy. I can't consume. It's just more, I only have time to create. I create for a living, for clients. And then for myself, it's just, it kind of comes natural because I have friends or people ask, where's your style? What's your, where does your vision come from? And I think you're kind of born with it a little bit, but then you take from around you, your peers and different things. But, a lot of mine's just, what feels right.
For those that don't know who you are and what you do,
Yeah.
give them a quick elevator picture of your background.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Greenville, actually, but I've been in the ad agency business in the professional career. I was a Clemson grad, been in the ad agency business for, I don't want to age myself here at the Modern Man, but 18 years in the ad agency business. I've worked in Manhattan, I've worked in Chicago, and on some of the largest brands in the world. Now I own an agency. We're primarily content, social media. We kind of help people tell their stories, and it's called Radical. So ad agency business, and building content and building stories every day. So what we do is create. We like to tell. I tell people we help people push people out of their comfort zones. A lot of what we do is create for others, but we help them kind of tell their story. Everybody's got a story, but not everyone knows how to kind of tell it naturally, on their own. And so it's amazing when you can free people up and to make them comfortable to tell their story.
I like that concept you talk about, telling your story, because I think a lot of people have the lives that they live where they wake up, they go to work, come home, eat dinner. It's one thing to tell that story, but what about creating your story? How can someone create a better story?
Man, it's step one, man. Like it all starts with, I'm sure we've all been through those things, is determining your goal. What's your goal? And most people have lofty goals, honestly. When you really dig into them and you figure out what their goal is, what's your goal? And your goal doesn't have to be my goal. Your goal for you is never wrong because it's yours and you should own that. Most people love the memory aspect, Tyler's a big legacy guy, and I am too. That's my thought process, is how are you remembered? And with the creativity portion, if you want to be remembered, be original. You know why Kobe Bryant will never be the best basketball player ever? Because he was a Michael Jordan copy. And that's my opinion. I've watched his game. Even if you watch the move, everybody's probably seen a little video where they're playing right next to each other and they're doing the same things.
Right.
Well, you can't be the best because this guy is who you copied. So, and that's always been my thought process is, I take bits and pieces from the best. If you're great at this, I will listen to you about that. If you're great at this, I will listen to you about that. At the end of the day, I'm my own finished product. I make my own recipe. I take things from different places to make myself what I want, to make that creation. Like even from the way I dress, the way I train, in the gym, to the way I conduct my financial business, to the way I market, to the way I think. I try to take little pieces from everybody and create something versus the blueprint style. Because if you just follow a blueprint, everybody's like, oh, you're a clone, you're
Somebody
a copy.
else.
I want to be me. I want to be the me that, with the help from above and whatever my mind can concoct and pull together from other great people, that's who I want to be.
There's a Joe Rogan video called "Be the Superhero" or something of your own story, and one of my coaches, Sean Whalen, listens or watches that video every single morning. And I love that aspect of being the superhero of your story, but it starts with having your own story. And I think that's like the biggest encouragement to anyone is it's your story, and you can create it today. That's been the fascinating thing that I've seen in my life and in so many others, is that just because the narrative of that story has been one way for 5, 10, 20, 30 years doesn't mean that that story can't change tomorrow. But you have to be the superhero of that story for it to change. And literally, this guy watches that video every single morning. He's like, that's just the mentality. Every single thing I do, every place that I go, every person I talk to, I think to myself, what would the superhero version of me do in this scenario? And it changes the story completely when you start putting that context around everything.
Change is an interesting word because I think, when I think through my lifetime, and there's been so many different avenues that I feel like I've been down and mindsets that I've been in life. I feel like if you can't adapt change, that's change goes in modern are almost like parallel to me. It's like, to me, I think because the people that I know that I don't feel like have embraced being modern or, being open to new perspectives is because they're afraid to change. And I've never been afraid to change. And I think if there's one attribute, it's like I'm open to change, and I think, that open-mindedness and ability and willingness, it doesn't mean you're not scared as hell, but you've got to be open to change in your mindset and your ways. And, I'm going to walk down this side of the road today, or I'm going to go move to New York and my family and friends think you're crazy, you just got to do it, and I think not enough people feel freed up, I think they're chaining themselves, but I think it's that ability to change.
You mentioned a lot about that change, and it reminds me of the book. I'm sure we probably all read it. Small book called "Who Moved My Cheese."
I was just about to say that.
Yeah. Well, but speaking about books and everything, to create, we have to create from some form of inspiration. So the ironic thing about it is, in order to create at some point in time, we have to consume. What are some things you consume or have consumed that allows you to create?
What do you think, Charles?
Hot potato.
I feel like it goes this way every time.
I think I answered first last time.
Well, hey, I'm 100%. I'm a big mentor guy, big coach guy. Some of that comes from the learning aspect of sports, for instance. Like, I tell my kids all the time, you can listen to a coach this guy can be 80 years old and he can talk to you about, they play basketball and football. This guy can talk to you about basketball for 10 hours. And he's going to tell you one thing that's going to save you 2 years of work. And it's literally one thing. Are you setting your bar when you do your crossover? And all of a sudden I see my kids' eyes go, I'm not. And if you just keep doing that, dealing with that, doing it on your own. So I like to consume experience, I guess would be my example. I want to consume experience. We do this thing based on what we know. We do this thing one time. Average is 84 years for a man. I want to fast forward everything as much as possible. I don't want to spend years trying to figure out these little idiosyncrasies, and that comes with putting your ego under the table and talking to someone else. And it doesn't always have to be someone older than you. There are people younger than me that are doing great things in certain areas, and I see it, and I salute those guys, and I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about, I want to learn what you know. I want you to give me that shortcut. If we try to take our time and learn everything on our own, purely from trial and error, you're gonna have a rough one. So that would be my thing: consume expertise and consume knowledge from others.
To me, inspiration's it's a difficult one because people use inspiration and motivation interchangeably, and it's not the case.
Yeah.
Inspiration comes from in spirit, which means from within. And so how can I go to someone else to get something from within? You can't. But even as I'm saying that, I've thought of a million different times where I've said like I need some inspiration, or I've told someone that I'm going to inspire, or like that my goal has been to inspire someone or to be an inspiration. Like, well, how does that work? Motivation is usually what you're going to external sources for. But inspiration, to me, that comes from purpose, comes from passion, that comes from having the goals, like Charles was saying. It comes from knowing your why. Like that's what keeps people, in my opinion, inspired. Like when I think of waking up inspired, I don't think of where did I go this morning, what did I listen to, what did I watch, who did I talk to, so that I can be inspired. To me, again, coming from within, that's I'm either inspired or I'm not. But I think those things like having a purpose, knowing what that purpose is, we've all got one, but knowing what that purpose is, knowing what your why is, having big goals, those are the things that when I wake up and I feel inspired, like those are what I'm focusing on. I think too many people kind of use those interchangeably. You hear that a lot. That's kind of a difficult topic.
What is your why?
And it changes. It used to change more often than it's changing right now. Right now, I'm pretty loctite on my why as far as what I want to do, and that's a key laser focus on helping other people become successful. But I think that's because I've gotten to a certain level of comfort in where I am with my business now. Because before, selfishly, I had to get myself in that place before I could worry about anybody else being successful. Mm-hmm. I had to take care of myself through personal responsibility. But now my focus is on how many other people that I can create a scenario and an environment and a platform for them to experience the same thing that I've experienced over the past few years. And just knowing in the back of my mind that by doing that, I will be successful. But having a genuine focus on that individual person, those individual people, and creating that change in their lives. Like that to me is what got me up at 4:30 this morning on a Sunday to go to my office, was to work on that.
So some of the things we can consume, books, classes, courses, and you mentioned wanting to help other people. When you walk into a room, based on style, based on just how someone carries themselves, you can almost tell if somebody is a consumer or creator. In my head, I think of the Homer Simpson example. What does Homer Simpson look like? He's big, he's fat, eats donuts, sits on the couch, watches TV all day. That's just one example of who you would think a consumer would look like. What do you think a creator looks like?
I mean, I'll answer that. Maybe indirectly, but
You say the creator or a creator?
yeah.
A creator.
Got it.
Yeah. If you see him, let me know.
I'm trying to go over there. Where's he at?
I'm going to lump like the first and the second, one of the topics you had there, and I'm going to come full circle with that. And I think for me, I was at this point where I was consuming, reading books, anything I could get my hands on, probably 5 years ago. And then what I realized, and is kind of this truth of like who you surround yourself with. Mm-hmm. What I consume now is like the 5 to 10 people that I surround myself with, the Tylers of the world, Patrick Garner, who's a good friend and business associate, and don't want to name drop every person, but now I'm consuming from them like directly, like what I'm seeing, what they do. I see the success that they're having. And you can reverse engineer that for yourself and build your own version of success. But when you surround yourself with positive, influential people that are being successful, I mean, just look out. It will all come together. Because some of it's cliche, but I watch, some of my friends even, I know some of the people they're still engaging with, and there's no doubt in my mind it's the difference between success and great content and great energy and not. Mm-hmm. And I think, to come full circle, when I walk into a room, whether it's a networking event or a business, it's amazing how now I will end up gravitating towards the like-minded and the ones that we can share ideas with, and that really can speak to me in a way that, you know, I don't know, it's like almost, you know, you talk about these things and you think, that's cliche or whatever, or like you got to make stuff happen. Like, but when you start seeing and knowing what that mindset looks like, you'll find yourself engaged with those people. And I think that it's been rewarding for me doing less like consuming in the format of reading and more in the kind of the engagement of conversation. And
What advice would you give to anyone watching right now that is on the ground level, that doesn't have access to the Tyler Harris's of the world, yourself, Charles Russ's? How can they increase the level of their circle?
well, you know, it's funny. You know, Matthew's here, who shoots content for me, and you know, Matthew's a freshman at Wofford. He's, what are you, 19, Matthew? 18. And Matthew reached out via email at an agency that I was working at 6 or 8 months ago, and before I started Radical, and he sent an email, and I just appreciated like his kind of go-getted nature. He was like, I've, you know, been starting to shoot some videos. I'm kind of interested, and I'm like, he took the, you know, he sent it to the chief marketing officer of an ad agency, and he took the whatever, and so I met with them, and you know, because I will engage with people. I had another guy that's like 22 that reached out to me on Facebook. He's like, I didn't expect you to reply. I've been following you and Tyler and like doing this stuff. I mean, if someone makes the effort, I mean, it may not be tomorrow, but you got to put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to ask. And if you send one email, it doesn't work, send 10 more. Yeah. And, you know, Matthew's been in meetings like with multimillionaires the last 6 months, people we've been meeting with, business ventures that I've been talking about. I mean, you know, he's been having access as 18 because he put himself out there. And, you know, that's a real world example. And I think, you know, you don't be afraid to reach out. And I think people like, it's like paralysis by analysis. I think people think that people might not be accessible, but I think you'd be surprised if you're willing to kind of put the effort in.
Nice. So kind of spreading it out to everyone, still talking about, you know, what does a creator look like? Someone who's creating content or creating their style, the world around them. How can you kind of pick them out of a crowd?
I don't think it's possible. I mean, look around. I wish we had another camera that would scroll to all these guys we have sitting here. Mm-hmm. If you were to walk into a room, walk into a meeting, walk into a bar, walk into a club, I'm not going to pick these guys out, because the thing about being artistic and the idea of creation, I'm talking to TJ a lot, our boy TJ Reeves, you know, and talking to him a lot, though, he's very creative. He's very creative. Yep. But there's so many realms of being creative. Mm-hmm. Fashion is creative. If you were a true fashion guy, if you were a true stylistic person, you're creative, because you create your own look. That's just one example. These guys that do content, the different styles, the different cuts, the different ways to move, that's all creative. So I don't think there's a look, you know, not to be the antagonist in the story, but there's not a look for a creator. There's not a look for someone who is creative, because I may see someone who appears very bland, but we have that conversation, and all of a sudden they're like, "Well, I'm an artist. I paint this. I do that." I'll use my girlfriend. She is a very creative person. She looks creative though. Like, she looks creative. She does. Her hair's purple. She does outlandish. So you would see her in our modern day definition of creative. You would see her and be like, "I bet she's creative," and she does. All the artwork in my gym, she painted it. Like, she is creative. She's artistic, which is what a definition of creative. But with all the new avenues to be creative, you know, even the idea of building a business is creative in its own right. Mm-hmm. I'm going to pluck an idea out of thin air. It's a value proposition for society, but I'm going to create it on my own. That's creative. So there's not a look for a creator. And that's why openness is important. That's why exactly what he said, accessibility and openness is important. You never know who you're talking to. You may literally be talking to the next Elon Musk and he's 17. But you're talking to him and you just, well, I'll have that conversation and we'll see. So the conversation though, so it's not a look, maybe it's a sound. Because the conversation will tell you. When you have that first conversation, you'll get motivation. You'll start to see things that they'll start to talk about things that you've never thought about. Like I'll say it right now. Between talking to Tyler, Ted, you doing your podcast, coming to Greenville Hustle, Andre reached out to me just like, he reached out to you. He just reached out to me on social media. So between all of you guys, now I'm like, next year I got social media's got to change for me. I need to get into that world. There's things that I want to create. There's literally an image, a picture that I want to create for the world and show them things that I'm doing and that you can do the same thing. It's not hard for no other reason than just create it. So I would challenge the look aspect and say maybe it's a sound or an energy, something like that.
You couldn't have said this better. I'm so glad you just said energy, because that's exactly what I wanted to mention. First, in saying that I agree, whether it's creative or creators, all colors, shapes, sizes. But I've been struggling with an issue lately, which is energy and enthusiasm. I've been reading so much and listening to so much about energy, enthusiasm, energy, enthusiasm, energy, enthusiasm. Coming from a person that's more introverted and doesn't have a very natural like energy and enthusiasm about me, in comparison to those that you easily recognize, like that person's got a lot of energy and enthusiasm. I'm not that person. But a lot of the stuff that I've been reading and listening to lately is like, it doesn't matter. Like, even if you're not that person, forced energy and enthusiasm will attract the people you want to attract, will attract the opportunities you want to attract. And so I look at a guy like Dan Waldschmidt, a friend of Ryan and mine. Like, every time I sit down with him, and the last time I just asked him, I was like, have you always had this energy and enthusiasm? Because it's just, it's level 1,000.
Yeah.
But in a good way. There's level 1,000 in a bad way, and that's when you go to the room, the loudest person in the room, that's not who I'm talking about. Because that's usually the one that really got the least put together. but the true energy and enthusiasm based on confidence and knowing their role and their why and their purpose, like that person that's like waking up with their hair on fire because they know exactly what they got to do every day. I look at that and I struggle with like, how do I force it and it not be fake? Like, how do I like all of a sudden get this like level of enthusiasm that's going to be a stretch for me, but it's coming from a genuine place, I can't increase my caffeine intake anymore. So that's not the answer. And I'm not going to do drugs. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. But I think when you go into that room, that genuine energy and enthusiasm is what I'm looking for.
Well, I have a question then. For whatever reason, you've been attracted to everybody who's sitting here, in some reason. What attracted you to everybody? Maybe different for everybody. I would just ask you, what attracted you to each person in here?
I think it was certainly the like-mindedness and the genuineness and the drive. Like I could instantly, that instant difference in drive of knowing that these people are trying to level up constantly, they're trying to go somewhere extraordinary. I think that's what I could see, but I think that's the like-mindedness.
But that's energy to me.
It is, exactly.
That's energy.
You're right.
And you have an energy. You have energy. Like,
sure.
When we had lunch the other day, I'm like, dude, this dude's got energy.
That's new energy.
Yeah, and that's
because
awesome.
I've just now really gotten into my purpose and passion. But I think it's the enthusiasm side, the like, I don't know. And I'm glad I said I struggle with it, because as we're talking, I'm struggling.
Yeah,
as far as like where
from me, and I don't know what you got to say. I don't struggle with your enthusiasm. I see it. I see it on social media, and I see it when I talk to you. Mm-hmm. Like, there's different ways of expressing anything.
Sure.
And your enthusiasm comes out literally in what you're doing. Like the
So
fact
like
that
intensity
you wanna
can be
do it.
enthusiasm.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like volume and
Exactly.
speed of talking. Like Dan is like volume, and like I've never met someone that talks faster.
Well, I
But you
think-
realize it's because this guy is doing so much that he has like, it's like almost as though
And
he has tried
he's
to
like borderline
condense.
genius. So he's like
Oh,
10
yeah.
steps down the road. Like when
Yeah.
you're like, we may all be 2 or 3, but he's like 10 down the road and
And
talking about
Gary
every
V,
one of them.
he's very Gary V-esque. Like
Yeah.
it's very much like Gary. Like you say one sentence and he's 4 paragraphs down, and he doesn't need to hear anymore
No.
because he understands it, and he's ready to respond. You know.
Yeah.
And I guess, and that's a good point. I think I guess the different forms of enthusiasm.
Yeah, dude, you don't
'Cause
have
it's
to
all
bounce off the
energy.
wall. Ted is the most energetic cat I've ever met. Like when he's out,
Yeah.
and it's positive. It's massively positive. It's very inclusive to everyone in the room. That's his energy.
Yep.
I would put my energy as far as expression. My energy is I'm pretty expressive out there, but it's not Ted energy. But that doesn't make it. It does. It's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
So what are some other adjectives we could use for enthusiasm? Because I think charisma would be a lot of what you're talking about with Ted's like
Sure.
that the ability to MC an event is like the most difficult thing can imagine. Like I talked to Jay do a lot about this as well, and like the ability to hold an audience like that, like this pure charisma, enthusiasm. So what would be some other things that you would look at and be like, that guy's enthusiastic, but he's not over the top. Like I just got
Someone could be
hustle on
charming,
that.
maybe.
Charming. That's a good one.
I think if you're confident in whatever you do, it comes off as energy. You know, like and there's a cocky and confident fine line, but I think Tyler's confident in what he does, and so that's an energy, and that comes off as enthusiastic to me in that way, and I think that's
it.
Yeah.
it's a confidence. Like I never doubt anything Tyler's saying. Like like even when I know he's full of it. Like like I'm kind of.
I believe he believes that. He believes that 100%. I believe that.
Yes,
I don't necessarily believe what he says, but I believe that he believes what he says.
I'm up here in the Antarctics and I am buying that ice.
Yeah, dude, he
But
said
I feel like I need it.
But dude, you do it though. You do it. I'll give you your credit. You do it. Like when we were having lunch, and you were talking about the new product which you're launching. He gave me like a 48-hour ahead. I got a 48-hour ahead of time sneak peek. We're just talking having lunch.
True.
But the literal confidence, and you find your confidence the way you find it. You find your confidence through preparation.
Yeah.
You ready.
Yeah.
Dude, that gets maybe not for the average guy, not for everybody. That gets me hyper. Like when you're telling me, I'm like, you know what that makes me do is like, Charles, you need to prepare for your next undertaking. You need to be ready when you step on the floor, like Tyler's ready. And the fact that you're sharing that, dude, that's enthusiasm. That gives, you're putting out positive energy into the universe, and that's your way. That's your way.
Yeah.
And your way doesn't have to be Ted's way. Your way doesn't have to be his. It doesn't have to work like that. It's the same thing. What does a consumer look like? What does a creator look like? They don't look a certain way. Because the richest guy on the hill may have just may have been lucky one time, and now you have money. And we all know when you have it, you can make it.
So bringing that all together, because I think the conversation had a really good flow to it in terms of not necessarily knowing what a creator looks like, but more or less feeling that energy. You get that energy, and the amazing thing about that enthusiasm, that energy, it travels through different mediums. You don't have to be in person to feel it or see it. It can happen through social media, much of like how we kind of linked up. And really the inception of Modern Man came from a DM message to you. A lot of people ask, how did you and Tyler link up? I was scrolling through Instagram. I saw a picture from Tyler, and I saw it was Greenville, and I was like, oh snap, I'm in Greenville. And I reached out. Tyler responded. We had a sit down, and I thought we were gonna talk for 30 minutes. We ended up talking for like 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned Modern Man, and he said, yeah, let's do it. So kind of feeling that energy, realizing where other people are, putting yourself out there is the start of kind of almost consuming what you want to create. Now when you're ready to create, what is it men should create? What do we create?
Well, I mean, I'm a father of 4 boys, so I think
Are you done creating?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done creating. So I've done some creation. We're done creating, but now it's like crafting, men, and it's even, a business that I'm starting with a couple partners is about actually teaching 10 to 15-year-old boys to how to get a head start in all these personal development things you see, like all those courses you get hit with on Instagram. We're going to do that for 10 to 15-year-old boys. And so we're going to get them ahead on personal development and finance. So like creation for me is in a lot of different things. It's creating, a life for my family. It's creating businesses. It's creating content for my clients. It's, when you're clear on the why and the purpose, everything you're creating is backed by that rationale. And so for me, freedom is a big one for me, like in my purpose, and it's freedom to me is always having this energy towards these things will allow me to have the freedom to create what I want when I want. And I think, creation takes many forms now. And I think content is an interesting word now, but content is really taking a lot of different forms. And I think content, culture, and, we were having some side discussions on, different fashions and different things that have come to Greenville and all that. And I think that everyone's idea of content can be different, but for me, creation revolves around, everything I do.
I'm not sure if did you use the word lifestyle? Kind of
Maybe.
with the freedom,
Yeah.
freedom, because
Yeah.
to me, it's creating it's creating a lifestyle, and for me, that lifestyle is just about doing what you want to do, when you want to do it, and on your terms, and that for some people, like that, and that for even within myself, that means sometimes 16-hour days of work. And then I know there'll be different periods in my life where that will mean no work or minimal work. But that being on my terms, like creating a lifestyle that I'm in charge of, that someone is not telling me, or I'm not being forced to do something because of all these outside circumstances, that I can do what I'm passionate about doing, and more importantly, I can not do what I'm not passionate about doing. It's probably way more important. Is getting to that point where like you don't have to do those things that you hate to do, that bring negativity in your life, that you can eliminate those from your life, and that you can focus all your time on positive stuff that you want to be working on, that you're passionate about. Like to me, that's the ultimate thing I'm trying to create.
If I had
that's fulfillment.
Yeah, one word of advice is for people, like, there is no reason to settle for something you're not happy with anymore. There are so many avenues and many ways. Like, yeah, I mean, when I was in New York, did I make more money? Yeah, a little bit, but I didn't have near the personal, like, I don't know, freedom, fulfillment, that's the word, that I have now, and no one should be on anyone else's terms.
Yeah. But 95% of people, like the toughest question you could ever ask yourself and ever have to answer is, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want? And I'll take you through a quick scenario.
Know the answer to
well,
it.
and they'll use phrases that aren't real life. So they'll say, I want to be financially free. Got it. What does that look like? What does that mean for you? That means that I'm no longer controlled by debt. Cool. We're getting closer. So what does no longer being controlled by debt look like? What does that allow you to do? well, if I don't have the debt anymore, then that means that I can, be more free with my time. Awesome. That's another good thing. So what are you doing with that time that you're now free with? And then when you finally go down this rabbit hole of why, but why? So what does that mean? So what does that mean? So what does that look like? And then all of a sudden you get to that lifestyle. You're like, I want to be able to pick up my kids from school every day while making a decent living and taking 6 weeks of vacations every year and visiting my parents that live in North Carolina every other weekend. Like when you get specific to like what you actually want, like by the detail, it's like, oh, it's because you said financially free and I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
But you really, that's the life you want.
It's almost like the pre-programmed answers we've given ourselves.
Yeah.
And only when we kind of challenge ourselves to ask, but why, 6, 7 times is when we run out of those prescribed answers. And then we actually have to tap in deeper and think to ourselves, oh yeah, well, so why do I really want that?
Yeah.
And most people don't get to that level. They don't peel the onion back that much.
That's a tough thing to do by yourself. Like I didn't realize that until I went through that process with a coach, and it was 11 hours into the day of him asking me why.
Yeah.
And finally, on the 11th hour, he was like, got it. 11 hours, cool. Now we can actually start trying to figure some stuff out.
But once you get there, then you are truly creating and not consuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not that you can't, but
It's a hard process without knowing. That was the most massive open-ended question in all the modern mans I think you've ever asked. What should a man create?
Yeah.
Because as men, we're all different. Even up here, I think we're all kind of like-minded, but we're extremely different. So the overarching answer is whatever you feel like is needed in this world, that's what you should create. So that could be as high as creating opportunities for people, for other people. That could be my family life needs to be improved and digging down into that. But whatever you feel like is needed in this world, and your world may not be my world. Your world may be, it's me, my wife, and my 2 kids at the house. This is my world. This is what I have. This is what I need. Because it's not sound right now. Create that sound environment. Or it may be you're doing great at home. You're doing so great that you have time, that you have assets, but you see all these people out here. It's almost the thought of being charitable. That you see all these people out here that need opportunities. They want to work. Like this guy wants to work, but he doesn't have an opportunity. So I'm going to create these opportunities. That's being creative, and that's what you should create. Because at the end of the day, if you see something in the world as a need, and you start to fill that gap, that will give you fulfillment. Because if you didn't see it as a need to begin with, it would never be on your radar. It's not a need. Be it a value need, be it a humanitarian need, it's a need.
Yeah.
So when you create things that fill needs, you'll start to fulfill yourself. Because what you identify as a need, I may never identify as a need. It doesn't matter to me. But if it's a need for you, and you create something that fulfills it, you'll start to fulfill yourself. And that's what that intrinsic happiness that will allow you to give that happiness to other people. That's where it'll come from.
That's so important because if you aren't happy, you can't make others happy. I mean, it is so true, and it's like I've been divorced and I was miserable, but I was miserable, so my first marriage was miserable, and now I'm remarried. And my wife, Nicole, and we're not perfect. We have our ups and downs, but I'm in a so different place. And lo and behold, our marriage is in a different place, it's not coincidental, And so I think that at peace and it being happy inside and being content. Look, we're not all, it's not about being perfect or like being all happy all the time, but when you're content and driven with a purpose and you know what that is, I think it allows you to create and give and to be and to do those things. So I think that's a key thing.
The interesting thing with that is you have to create, like, you make yourself happy. So
yeah.
So when I go through accountability with our team in all these areas of life, there was one person I was talking to. I don't want to get too detailed and call them out, but their marriage, they're struggling, and they've been struggling for a long time. And she's always angry at her husband, always upset, and he's not changing, and won't change, and all this. It's the way it's always been. And finally, I just said, I was like, it's not his job to make you happy. Like, it is not his job to make you happy. And guess what? Why would he be happy? Every time you talk to him, you're yelling at him, and you're angry because it's bad. I was like, why don't you just work on you? You get happy, and I promise you, if you enter every dialogue, enter the house, and you are happy because you're doing all this stuff for you, he will take notice, and things will fall into place. But that's not his job. It was just this like light bulb, like, oh, you're right. Oh my God.
Well, that's it. Like, create what you think the world needs. The first thing the world needs before we do any of this other stuff, before we help anybody, before we take care of our family. So that's why you give the overarching view, because there's people in different places. There's people who are happy. There's people who are happy and are taking care of their families. There are people who are happy taking care of their families and 50 other families. First thing the world needs is a happy, healthy, efficient, content with, I'm content here, I do want to grow, but I'm content you. Yeah. So if you're talking about creation, that's the first thing you should create, and that is a creation. That's not, because I'm sure we all know 50 guys that they could create such a great person with what they have, but they're not doing it. They're sulking, they're sad, they're miserable. So that's the first one, man. Create the best you can create, and then I think everything else will just kind of fall in line.
The last thing I was going to say about that idea of figuring out what you want, I did a podcast with a guy that said the most profound thing that I probably heard all year. It took me back. Like, I was like, hey, I need a second. Process that. Whew, man. I'm like, that's so good. And I was like, all right, let's unpack that. But he played a little bit in the NFL, and that was his goal all his life. He wanted to play in the NFL, Then once he got in the NFL, started partying and slacking off in practice, and got cut from one team, got cut from another. But the statement that he made is that when he got to the NFL, he realized that he got what he always wanted, but he didn't want what he got. And I was like, oh, like, even as I said it now, like, I'm like, you got what you wanted, but you realize you didn't want what you got. And that's the importance of figuring out what you want from the very beginning, that you don't get there and realize that, oh crap, now I've got 20 years invested into getting me here. And that whole success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Like, and now I got to start over. Like, he had to completely start over his life.
Yeah.
And he had put everything into getting somewhere that he loved being a football player, but he hated playing football.
People mistake goals for purpose. Yeah. There's a difference between goals and purpose.
I think that's going to be a good spot to stop the conversation, because I mean, we could jump down that rabbit hole. And I'll open it up right. Yeah, I'll open it up right now. We're going to have an episode on creating happiness, finding your happiness, finding your goal, and what it is you want. I'd love to invite you back out to talk about that more. But for anybody out there wondering what to create, how to start creating, first and foremost, ask yourself why over and over and over again until you get rid of those prescribed answers and you find out what it is you want. Love that point, Tyler. Also, we have this thing called a cell phone. We have so many mediums, whether it's through books, audio, content on social media. You can create right now. So don't wait to create. Put yourself out there. Love that point as well. And of course, what the world needs more than anything, love Charles's point, a happy and content you. Go out there and be a modern man, guys.